In this video, we're going to talk about the product backlog and the stories that are going to be put in the product backlog and how we may estimate these stories. So the product owner is responsible for the product backlog, and the product owner maintains the stories added to the product backlog. So these stories contains requirements and features and describe how these features they are used, and they will then be added as an increment to the product. So each of these features, when the team work on them, they will take a bunch of features to work on, and then they will be added into the final product. The product owner keeps a relationship with the customer or the design team and understand the feature and requirements for the product. So that means that the team, when they work on the estimation, the sprint plan, they will have to discuss with the product owner to get the right understanding about the different features and needs for certain requirements in the stories. The Scrum team, they have full access to the product backlog, and they can review the stories, and also they have to estimate them. The stories describe functionality and requirements. So when you write the stories, you must make sure that you describe them as if a user is going to go through a certain step of processes that have a certain number of features in these stories. For example, the user will click on the login menu button, and the login window will appear, and then after that the user will enter the email and the password and then click submit. And after that, given it's a correct password, the user will be presented with a profile page, for example. This story contains, for example, the following. The feature is a login feature. The requirements would be, for example, the username is identified by an email, and the password is encrypted. So a separate design may give us how this screen may be laid out. That can be a UI design that's given in connection with these stories. The story card template may look something like this. Now, if you're using something like Trello, it may look different, and we can have a look at that later. So in this case, the story card would have a title, a description about how to test this story, and then some additional notes. Then there will be an estimate. So the estimate is the story points that the team will add to this card, and then the priority. Now, if you're using Trello, you don't need the priority because you just move the card up according to how important it is. So this illustrates actually how the product backlog could be published with stories, right? So the product owner will get information about the different requirements and so on, and he will then add the stories to the product backlog. The team will estimate these stories, right? So as they do the sprint planning, they will go through the stories and add estimation on it. So the product owner do not add estimation, just information about how the different cards or stories they work as the features and processes that the users will be using. Okay, so this illustrates actually how the product backlog can be published. Now again, remember the estimates that are given here are filled up by the team members, the Scrum team. Okay. So after building up the product backlog, the Scrum team will go ahead and work with the sprint plan. And they will work with the product owner to understand all these stories. Then during the sprint plan session, they will try to understand each of these stories, ask questions to the product owner, and then estimate each of these stories according to the understanding that they have. So they will give an overall estimation in story points using, for example, the Scrum Poker. We will also have a look at that later. The sprint plan can take somewhere between 1 to 4 hours, all depending on how complex the estimation process is.